Do you hear me? ICE agents, you're going to jail.
What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
Minnesota just did the unthinkable. Police stepping in and putting ICE agents in cuffs as the entire state erupts in outrage. This explosive showdown was triggered by federal shootings, chaotic raids, and a level of public fury that can no longer be contained. And now the crisis is accelerating so fast that leaders are warning this could trigger a historic clash between state power and federal authority, with consequences nobody is ready for.
Thousands of protesters took to the streets in the United States to demand the withdrawal of federal immigration agents from Minnesota. That's after the fatal shootings in Minneapolis this month of Renee Good and Alex Pretty by immigration or ICE agents.
The crisis began the moment federal immigration agents shot and killed Renee Nicole Good on January 7th, followed 17 days later by the fatal shooting of Alex Pretty during a separate enforcement action. These two deaths ignited immediate outrage as residents accused federal officers of crossing the line from enforcement to execution. Minneapolis turned into the national center of fear and distrust, with thousands convinced that if 2 U.S. citizens could be killed in plain sight, then no one in the city was safe.
We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday,
Operation Metro Surge sent waves of ICE and Border Patrol units into Minneapolis with unmarked vehicles, tactical teams, and rapid deployments appearing in residential areas without warning. Families reported agents sweeping through apartments, clinics, and public transit locations, creating an atmosphere of shock and instability across entire neighborhoods. The city began to feel like a militarized zone as videos emerged of federal officers confronting civilians and escalating tensions in real time.
These incidents have ignited nationwide outrage and calls for further action. Many students and teachers abandoned classes from California to New York.
The streets of Minneapolis filled with non-stop protests as crowds blocked highways, surrounded government buildings, and demanded an immediate stop to the federal raids and shootings. What began as public outrage escalated fast when protesters and federal agents collided in physical standoffs involving shoving, barricades, and attempts by each side to control the streets. The unrest spread into St. Paul, where synchronized rallies and overnight clashes turned both cities into a continuous pressure zone.
250 demonstrations were organised across 46 states under the slogan, "No work, no school, no shopping, stop funding ICE."
The critical confrontation unfolded near a crowded community center when ICE personnel attempted to detain several individuals and found themselves surrounded by an angry crowd demanding they stand down. Tension spiked as agents pushed forward, triggering a rapid intervention from local police, who stepped between both sides and took control of the scene. In the peak shock of the standoff, officers placed 3 federal agents in handcuffs on charges of disorderly conduct and interference with local authority, while the crowd erupted in disbelief and celebration.
This kind of conduct and siege needs to stop, not just in Minneapolis. It needs to stop nationwide.
Frey has been shepherding a city riven by protests, infuriated by the killing of 2 American citizens at the hands of ICE and CBP, and shaken by Operation Metro Surge, an aggressive immigration enforcement operation that has left some people afraid to leave their homes.
The reaction from Jacob Frey was immediate as he condemned the federal operation for bringing fear and instability into the city, and instructed local officers to stop supporting ICE actions of any kind. His stance triggered a wave of reinforcement from other major cities, including Philadelphia, where Larry Krasner warned that federal personnel who violate local laws could face criminal consequences. The pressure intensified when Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith demanded full investigations into federal conduct, turning the street conflict into a full-scale political confrontation.
Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed.
Minnesota entered a historic shutdown as tens of thousands walked off their jobs in a statewide general strike that signaled open resistance to federal enforcement. The energy spread instantly as the ICE Out of Everywhere movement activated supporters across major cities, including New York City, Boston, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, creating a national wave of solidarity marches and coordinated shutdowns. Highways, campuses, and public squares filled with crowds demanding accountability, turning the Minnesota crisis into a nationwide uprising that reshaped the political temperature of the country.
250 demonstrations were organised across 46 states under the slogan, "No work, no school, no shopping, stop funding ICE." Riot police stood in a line with shields as protesters erupted outside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles.
Minnesota escalated the confrontation by taking the federal government to court and arguing that the 10th Amendment prohibits Washington from forcing state and local resources into immigration operations. The legal tensions surged when a federal judge refused to halt Operation Metro Surge, despite civil rights concerns, creating a direct clash between state authority and federal enforcement. A separate judge publicly criticized ICE for ignoring court orders and enabling aggressive detentions, signaling deep judicial frustration and pushing the crisis into full constitutional territory.
Protesters taunted Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino outside his hotel as news broke that he has been booted out of Minneapolis by order of President Trump. They were trying to make his last night in Minneapolis a sleepless one.
Inside the federal structure, senior officials issued new internal directives, telling agents to avoid confrontations with crowds and limit engagement to high-priority targets only, a move that signaled concern over escalating optics and operational control. Pressure increased when Gregory Bovino and several units began withdrawing from Minnesota, a quiet repositioning that revealed the depth of internal strain. Multiple federal teams shifted out of the Twin Cities without public explanation, leaving a clear impression that the enforcement apparatus was struggling to maintain stability in the middle of a rapidly expanding crisis.
The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of ICE and federal officers that were there at the time. Having them there was only causing more chaos. Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that, yes, they created themselves.
Businesses across Minnesota publicly condemned the escalating violence as workers reported fear, instability, and a surge in absences that disrupted daily operations statewide. Community groups responded by forming rapid response networks that provided legal support, food distribution, transportation assistance, and safe shelter for families caught in the middle of the enforcement surge. Neighborhood volunteers created real-time watch systems that tracked federal movements, documented confrontations, and warned residents of unfolding actions, turning entire communities into organized defense zones operating under constant stress.
I am the Minneapolis Police Chief. This morning, Minneapolis police officers received a report of federal law enforcement being involved in a deadly force incident, meaning shots had been fired. Minneapolis police officers responded to the scene.
The situation reached the highest levels of government when White House ordered federal agencies to pull back from protests in Democratic-led cities unless direct assistance was formally requested, a move widely seen as a forced retreat under political pressure. Polling data showed a rapid collapse in public confidence as national surveys highlighted Minnesota as a symbol of federal disorder and declining leadership stability. Inside the president's own party, divisions widened as some lawmakers defended aggressive enforcement, while others privately blamed the administration for triggering a crisis that spiraled out of control.
ICE and a litany of other forces have been unleashed as racist and inhumane weapons against our communities. We have seen our neighbors kidnapped off the streets, dragged out of their cars, out of their homes, out of their schools.
City leaders across the country announced that federal personnel who violate local laws could face detention, with Philadelphia, Portland, Seattle, and Chicago preparing their own frameworks for legal pushback. Governors amplified the pressure by demanding accountability and leadership changes inside federal agencies as the fallout from Minnesota spread into their states. Immigration enforcement instantly became the most polarizing issue in national politics, with legislative chambers locked in fierce conflict and both parties accusing each other of fueling the crisis now gripping the country.
Well, despite the sub-zero temperatures here in Minneapolis, thousands of people have taken to the streets, marching through the downtown area, white hot with anger, expressing their frustration not only at ICE, but also at Donald Trump.
Families described hiding their children during federal sweeps as tearful testimonies spread across social media and fueled national outrage in real time. Residents captured nightly confrontations on phones and live streams that showed chaotic scenes of panic, shouting, and sudden deployments of federal units in vulnerable neighborhoods. Immigrant communities operated under constant fear as clinics, schools, and shelters shifted into emergency mode to protect people caught in the crossfire of a rapidly escalating enforcement campaign.
Anti-ICE protests raging in Minneapolis after another deadly shooting involving a federal agent.
Local law enforcement agencies began distancing themselves from federal operations as police departments, sheriffs, and city leaders declared they would not participate in actions that violated community directives. Federal officials responded by accusing multiple jurisdictions of obstructing national security, which pushed legal experts to openly debate whether local authorities had the power to detain federal agents who crossed local boundaries. The country entered a dangerous gray zone where conflicting commands, collapsing trust, and overlapping jurisdictions created a structural breakdown that exposed how fragile the balance of state and federal power had become.
You've got thousands of federal agents in Minneapolis, not around safety, not even around immigration, but to create a political narrative.
Protests accelerated across major urban centers as demonstrations erupted in Houston, Atlanta, Denver, Miami, and Phoenix, amplifying Minnesota's crisis into a nationwide confrontation. State leaders in Massachusetts, Connecticut, California, and Washington began evaluating legal action aligned with Minnesota's challenge, signaling a coordinated multi-state resistance. National media framed Minnesota as the defining test of federal overreach, and the expanding wave of unrest showed the country shifting toward a larger and more dangerous confrontation that was beginning to spread far beyond the Midwest.
What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV, and today that recklessness cost someone their life.
So, after everything that happened in Minnesota, should local police be allowed to shut down federal agents when things go too far? If you want more unfiltered breakdowns like this, hit like, drop a comment, subscribe, and share this video right now.